Okay.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Let's maybe wait a minute more. More people want to join.
Hey, Alper. Can't hear you.
Hi, Craig.
How are you?
Fine, great. How are you?
All right, let's kick it off. Great to see so many people on the call. This is the Database Office Hours call. And we're starting it off with a shameless plug for the database group. We're fortunate to have 2 more positions opening in the database group. And I've linked the role description and also a reference to Slack. If you are interested in that and knowing more about it, or know anyone who's interested, feel free to follow those links and reach out to Craig. He's the hiring manager on that, right?
Yep. And it's actually, I'll add a link to Greenhouse too.
Awesome, thank you.
Does it
Yeah.
include a fancy GitLab database hoodie?
Yes.
One of
If
these,
that pushes
for
it over
sure.
the line, I will make sure you get one.
I'm just saying the Geo team has hoodies.
Yep. That's
You
where
can
we
even-
borrowed the
You can even
idea.
take my shirt.
I'm just gonna casually wear that hat again today. Forgot about that. Cool. Second point on the agenda. Last time we talked about thin clones using Database Lab and how to access that with pSQL, which is kind of powerful. And then we also talked a bit about what we can do with migration testing. And there is a blueprint out there that got merged that sort of explains a bit of the idea. And I would like to sort of run through the workflow one time. Hopefully that works out. I'm a bit on the hot seat today. We can see about that. But basically showing the workflow, how you can use database migration testing. It's a very basic version today, so don't expect too much from it, but we can expand that later. And the idea is that it's in a state where we can, I think we can open it up to database maintainers, if that makes sense. So basically you would have access to the testing pipeline, and you can actually see migrations execute on the thin clone on the copy of the production database. And there is some feedback coming back to the merge request, and that's basically what I would like to show today. Is there any questions with regard to that, or anything we should look at in particular? If not, then I'm gonna try share my screen. Hopefully that works out and you can see a terminal.
Could you make the typeface font a bit larger? Just
Of
thank you.
course. Thanks. How about now? Okay. So basically, we start very simple. You have a database migration. I prepared one of these so we can take a quick look. So there is in the DB folder, you have a post migration. That's something that we've been working on. Basically, dropping our table. So this is gonna drop one of the archive tables for audit events. Also drops a function, drops a trigger. Very simple in that regard. There is a bit more to that change. So if you fully look at this, there is a couple more changes that I'm going to add. This is related to the migration testing. I haven't been able to merge that today, but this is sort of included. And now basically we push that and we create a merge request from it. Hoping you can see my browser now.
We can see it.
Okay.
I can see it.
Perfect. All right, this is the boring stuff. So basically creating the merge requests, which allows us to kick off the pipeline. So this is the regular GitLab pipeline that is gonna kick off in a couple of seconds. There we go. And then whenever there is a database change, we have some rules for that. So we would basically be able to know that there is a database migration included. And if that is the case, then there is an additional job, or a couple actually, but that's the one we're interested in. The additional job is added to the pipeline. And this is the one that's basically kicking off the testing pipeline. The testing pipeline lives on a different GitLab instance, on the ops instance. Mostly for security reasons. And this job is basically only kicking off that pipeline. And it actually runs in the beginning, so it has no dependencies, and it runs very quickly. So what you can do is go in and see the triggered downstream pipeline. You can all read this. And just follow that link. And that gets you on the ops instance, and this is where you would have to have access to. Right now, this is limited to the database group, but we would sort of gradually open it up for more people. And this is the testing pipeline. You can see it's basically preparing a couple of images and not more in the prepare stage. And then this is the stage that you're interested in the job, which basically creates a thin clone and runs the migrations. And this is a manual job so that it doesn't run automatically for all the merge requests and pipelines that we currently have. This is again for security reasons. So basically we still want someone coming in and looking at the change, checking that, well, the migration looks fair enough. There is no unexpected code in there. And then you can go in and sort of start that job afterwards. And this is basically spinning up the thin clone and then running the pending migrations. This is not only the migrations from the branch, so from the merge request that we created, but it's also pulling in the upstream changes from master. So this is a bit where it can get confusing if you see other migrations executing there because they are still pending. Even though they're not included in the actual change, we have to execute them. So depending on how often and how fast we deploy, we will see more or less of these unrelated migrations. In our case, it should only be the one that we're interested in, and this is what we're actually seeing, right? Dropping the couple of trigger function and then dropping the table. And hopefully there are not more migrations, and there are none. So this is the only thing that got executed. And then we should be able to go back to the original merge request. This is the one that I created, and this one is gonna already has gotten some feedback from the pipeline. This is very simple. Like I said in the beginning, it just makes a record of the runtime. It would also indicate a migration failure, so you would see an explosion instead. And I just added the total database size change, which seems like a bit maybe off. I don't think the table is that large, so maybe there is still a problem with that estimate, but this is the idea basically. So you get some feedback like this, and we plan to add a lot more, whatever we find interesting. For example, you could also get statistics on the queries that are being executed in the migration based on pgstat statements, for example, or there's a long list of ideas, and I'm sure we're going to find more stuff that is interesting that we can add. So just as a quick recap, what would happen is somebody creates a merge request with a migration. It gets reviewed in the beginning, and once we're confident about it, a database maintainer can go in, locate the latest pipeline, go to that job that we looked at, basically find the downstream pipeline on the ops instance and go in and manually execute that migrations job. And that allows you to see the full output of the migration for the maintainer, and we also get feedback on the merge request. This is what we've seen here, and that's pretty much it. When you want to get another iteration of this, it works the same basically. So you can you would again see the job, go to the downstream pipeline, kick it off again. You can do that as many times as you want, of course. It's not happening automatically because otherwise we would get some feedback on every migration run basically, or every pipeline that runs. Maybe a bit too often. Cool. Yeah, that's all I had. Any thoughts on that? Much appreciated.
First of all, it's awesome. That's the first thought.
Cool.
In which cases is it going to fail? That's what I was investigating in the document. Like when shall we get a failure of pipeline, under which conditions, and shall we be easily be adding more cases there where it should fail or stuff? If it makes sense.
So the migration pipeline, it would fail. For example, if you run into a statement timeout, or there's something wrong with the migration, you would still get this feedback. So this works despite the migration failure. But yeah, basically anything that can go wrong in the migration that would cause the pipeline to fail. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. So the merge request will be unmergeable because there is a statement timeout. That's what I mean.
Okay, no, that's not the case right now.
Okay.
So the job on the GitLab pipeline, this is really just triggering the other pipeline, and it's not even waiting for that pipeline to succeed or anything. It's an async kind of thing. So this is not a blocker for the merge request.
Yeah. Okay. Second question. There were very large data migrations. I think we are doing them too. Like migrations which take days, or I heard that there were migrations taking months in that issue while reviewing the demo. How will that behave in that scenario?
So this is about background migrations, right? So we can have very long background migrations. What would happen right now is that on the testing pipeline, we would see the scheduling part of those migrations. So we have a migration that basically enqueues a lot of jobs in Redis, and this is something you can see. But this shouldn't take too long. It can also take hours, but it shouldn't take months. The actual execution of those jobs is currently nothing you would see from the testing pipeline. So it gets scheduled into Redis, but there is no Sidekick running, nobody's picking up those jobs. One of the things that we are discussing is basically picking a few of those jobs at random and execute them on the thin clone and getting statistics from that instead of like running all of them. But that's sort of for a later stage for that project, I think.
And is the migration itself running in the runner context, or is it running in another instance? That's the third question. Right. The migration itself, does it run in the runner context, or does it run in a Docker inside the runner or something? I don't know what I'm asking exactly, but you will.
Yeah, it runs inside. So we have a dedicated CI runner for that project, 2 of them, and the migrations execute inside of cooking on that runner, which has GitLab checked out and installed and all that. And this runner and the is a network, so basically it doesn't have a chance of communicating to the outside world, sending any of the data that we're accessing somewhere. There's some security measures to prevent that.
Thanks for the answers.
Sure.
Anybody else? Should I ask my question next? Should we wait? Anybody else have questions about that? Was super cool, by the way.
Yeah, that's the last frontier in the migration testing.
Yeah.
I know the answer, but Andreas, you want to talk about the rollout plan?
Oh, sure. So the idea is that basically, maybe from next week we would want to invite database maintainers to GitLab. And I would want to be a bit careful with that. Not being able to everybody at once. Maybe a group would be good, like the database maintainers, and then see how that goes. I think when we do that in parallel, it needs a lot of resources on the backend. So there may be some bumps in the beginning, but that's what we're going to find out. So the idea is from next week, maybe invite database maintainers so they get access to that pipeline. And then start using that, and we can get feedback from that and iterate on that.
Thanks.
All right. If you have more comments, please let us know on Slack or next time, or on the MR. Blueprint is out, and we're really looking for feedback there. So we really appreciate it. Alex, would you like to go next?
Sure. So a number of people have been using the Postgres AI shared links, and a lot of some of them have been the public links, and sometimes it's not the public links, which Peter's calling out, which is really good because we definitely should talk about that. But right now, the documentation specifically calls out Depez, and I wonder if we should add Postgres AI shared public links as like an option in the documentation, basically just like calling out that and saying that that's an acceptable link to provide. I do think that making them public is a really, really important part of that, though. So part of me wonders if maybe we should say specifically publicly shared Postgres AI links, and then during review, we can just make sure the links are public links. I don't know if other people have thoughts on this, but.
Yes, I like the idea a lot to provide public links where possible. Obviously, sometimes it's not possible if it contains like confidential data, but it doesn't happen very often, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Initially, the Postgres link was private. I asked for a way to have a public link, and that's now what we have. If you want to put it in documentation, I think depending, maybe if there's no licensing obstacle or something, Craig, maybe we can just make it the default, depending on how we want to continue with database lab versus Postgres AI for GitLab team members plus the community members, if it makes sense.
That's a really good question. I don't know anything about how this stuff is set up or whether or not we can make them public by default, but that would be super great. Otherwise, I'll put up a merge request to the documentation with just talking about making them public for now.
Yeah, I've just added something to the document as well. I was thinking about maybe teaching Postgres AI to somehow emit a template which could be used in merge request, so people don't actually forget to all the details, for example, query plan and the link to the query plan and all the stuff. So it would be like using Postgres AI. So people would need to use Postgres AI, which we are encouraging anyway. And instead of copy and pasting the results to the merge request, they just and picking parts out of it, obviously, it could generate like a ready markdown to be just copy and pasted and put into the MR. So this would be my dream feature for Postgres AI.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Even we were even going one step further and thinking about shouldn't a merge request have something like a way to sort of allow you to have artifacts like this attached, so that you can have a comment, you can pull in that markdown, or you can, and we do the same thing for the database testing pipeline. But what if you also had a tab on the merge request that allows you to, add query plans, maybe call out particular queries that are interesting, and then there is some automation that we're building, and this is again related to database testing, that picks up those queries and adds the plan for you based on the thin clone and all that. That would be kind of nice, and getting that closer together so that we don't have, we don't need to write summaries and stuff like that, or just being able to copy markdown. That's a good step for sure.
Yeah, my dream there was exactly similar. So inside a comment in the MR or in the description, you have a new type of markdown tag, which you use just to do that. I mean, which calls Postgres AI, fetches the result in the background later, and then brings it back. In each comment, that way you will just paste another query, and then you will have the plan linked there.
Yeah, I think recently we added the ability for the GitLab bot user actually to accept some commands. So you can ping a GitLab bot and ask for help. This is specifically for community contributions, which is great. And I wonder if we could do something similar for the database lab as well. So you're just mentioning GitLab bot and say, okay, do the query for me on the data lab instance, so you don't have to go to Slack and paste your query inside that. And the bot would do the analysis and post back or comment back on your comment in the MR with all the information you need. So that would be interesting, but long way to go. I know.
Peter, it's not actually a long way to go. It's just Postgres AI definitely has, or I think would have an API easily. If you handle the licensing with Nick, I think that will be an easy thing to set up actually. I mean, on GitLab side, we are fine. On the Postgres side, we just need an API to run under certain credential to do that in a background job.
Perhaps we're already like halfway underway in that direction with the testing pipeline. Because I mean, one thing is how do you trigger that, and maybe the mentioning the bot sounds like ChatOps next level on the merge request, which is nice. And then that could also trigger the testing pipeline, and that already interacts with Postgres AI on the backend. So with Database Lab actually. So I think we can sort of think about expanding that to getting query plans and that feedback as well. All right, there's not much more on the agenda unless anybody wants to add something, which does not seem to be the case. Then I wish you all a good day. It was nice seeing you on the call, and see you next time. Cheers.